All right, I'll get started. Again, good evening, everyone. My name is Phyllis Tierman, and this, as you know, is our 2020 conversation with the candidates. It's fabulous to see so many familiar faces and lots of new faces, too. We're very grateful to the candidates for caring about our community, for running for the open spot for Board of Selectmen, and for joining us this evening. This meeting, as you can see, is recorded, and we are keeping all but the candidates who, when they speak, we're going to keep everybody on mute. Just for folks who don't know, Sustainable Wellesley has been doing this event live for many years. Usually this event is really fun. We get together, we mingle, sometimes there's a drink, we definitely eat, we chat, and then we open it up to the candidates. So this time it's absolutely going to be insightful, but maybe a little less fun, and I can't wait till we can all be back together again. As some of you know, and hopefully you will all learn, Sustainable Wellesley is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization that engages residents, businesses, and the town of Wellesley in actions required for sustainability, including protecting our climate, reducing pollution of air, land, and water, preserving biodiversity, minimizing waste, and ensuring environmental justice. And as I said, we're all volunteers, so anyone who's willing to wants to join this mission, please do. You can always email us at info@sustainablewellesley. We'll connect and see what issues are, important to you and what you want to engage on. So why do we do this event? Well, Sustainable Wellesley is not part of the town government. We often partner with different boards and committees in our town on initiatives and research. We also advocate for policies that promote sustainability and are deeply interested in hearing from the candidates for town office about their views on sustainability. Okay, now on with the show. We will give these fabulous three candidates 3 minutes to address the crowd on topics related to sustainability and climate. Please type any questions you may have for them into the chat box. So after the intros, we'll try to get in as many questions as possible. Just so you know that Sustainable Wellesley has asked them specific questions. We do this every year. They answer them, and I think tomorrow we'll get those published. And also some people have sent in questions in advance. So we may not get to all the questions tonight on this call, but we'll get to as many as we can. And if you put them in there, and maybe we'll send them out to the candidates if they wanna engage with you one-on-one afterwards. Okay, what else did I want to tell you guys? Please note that Sustainable Wellesley asked, oh, I already said that. Okay, so we're gonna get started. We're gonna go alphabetically. So Colette Affranc goes first, she's an A. And just for the record, I want you all to know that Colette has been our treasurer for the last, I'd say at least a year and a half, and I should have looked at the details. So we do know Colette. And I think I will turn it over to you, Colette. I'll mute myself and you can jump on.
Okay, thank you. So thank you to Sustainable Wellesley for hosting this event tonight, and thank you to the voters for watching. By way of background, I was born in Scotland, but I moved to America in 1995 and then to Wellesley in 1998. And at that time, I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers as an auditor and had spent 12 years with them in the UK and the US. In 2002, I took a career break to raise my family. Little did I know at the time, but career break was something of a misnomer. I started getting involved in things that touched my life and that were important to me. In 2006, that marked the start of my experience with town government as a neighbourhood representative, engaging with the developers, the neighbours and town boards in the significant redevelopment of Linden Square. That work continued over several years and really defined the way I wanted to work with people in town. My mantra was persistent, polite reasonableness, and I found that approach to be very successful. I continued my volunteering with the schools, in particular with the PTOs, and among many other things, I was treasurer for Sprague, treasurer for Central Council of PTOs, and in 2018, I was co-president at Wellesley High School PTSO. At the same time, I was co-president at the high school. I ran for and was elected to town meeting for Precinct H and sought an appointment on the town's audit committee. I purposefully took this path in order to understand town government better and to get a more global perspective on the town's finances. 2018 turned out to be a busy year for me, as that was the year I joined Sustainable Wellesley as its treasurer. This was not my first engagement with Sustainable Wellesley, as I'd supported the very beginnings of the organisation through my work on the board of Sprague PTO. And you can read a lot more about detail about that in my written statement, which, as Phyllis mentioned, will be published tomorrow. Like many of you, I've become more and more concerned with the environment and want to do what I can to contribute to do what I can to stop climate disruption and make the world a safer, more sustainable place for my children. The choices my family and I make in the daily management of our lives include a focus on sustainability. We chose to live in a central location so we could walk to our everyday activities like school, shopping, restaurants, amenities. And we conducted a home energy audit, replaced inefficient water heaters and windows, and planted about 50 arborvitae trees and native plant species in our yard, which is quite something because our yard is tiny. My landscaper was quite happy to stop using a blower and to leave grass clippings on the lawn. Again, you can read more about that in my written statement. In town government, I've been a strong supporter of new, more efficient schools for our elementary students, and I spoke in favour of the voluntary renewable energy programme motion under citizens' petition at the most recent annual town meeting. I ask for your vote as a dedicated civic volunteer who has put my financial acumen to use supporting Wellesley and the things that matter most to me. Thank you.
Oh, that was like 3 seconds early. Very good. I was ready to give you a couple extra seconds. Thank you, thank you. Okay, next we have Gwen. I'll go on mute and let you get your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm running for Selectman because I would like to bring Wellesley the new perspective, that of a small business person who began my business 25 years ago, and which started right here in Wellesley and has grown into a national firm. My 2 adult married sons run the business now day to day and carry on the legacy that I consider so important to our future. I also have served 2 terms on town meeting and have lived here 27 years. Due to COVID restrictions, I've spent more time in Wellesley than ever before in the last 5 months. There is no place like home. I've come to truly appreciate the peace, quiet, tranquility, and especially the beauty of our town. I want to help the town maintain its unique character, desirability, sound property values that only come from sound management. Speaking to the issues of environment and sustainability, I feel passionate as a parent and grandparent that we must leave an environment that is safe, healthy, and clean for our children and all future generations. Our health is the most precious thing we have, and the number of toxins in the environment through everyday pesticides, even in our food supply, and even the semen, natural gas leaking, methane, and other toxins is very concerning to me. Before I started my current business, I wrote for the suburban newspapers all over the Metro West. I was involved for 6 months in covering an environmental lawsuit that was dumping chemicals into wetlands and a river that impacted nearby wells and families' health. I interviewed those most affected by this and watched their struggle in the legal system. I saw firsthand how this affected people. This experience really shaped my views of how much lack of concern for the health and safety of people could be impacted by companies and even municipalities, and the necessity for guardrails to protect our precious natural resources. After the recent town meeting in June, I felt that my skills from being a business owner, understanding of business skills and management could be useful to the town as a selectman. My firm also owns a loan servicing company from which I have a unique understanding of debt, finance, and interest rates. I've also had years of travel, almost 2 million miles, working with successful business owners all over the United States. This also provides a unique skills and abilities to help manage this town. I've spent time in states all over America. I've witnessed what unchecked growth and overdevelopment looks like, and have seen what building unchecked without regard for the long-term impact on the environment and aesthetics adds to an area. I've been to Houston, just as an example, many times, and shortly after the hurricane a few years ago, I went down for a meeting and I saw what happened with the flooding that took place to building homes on floodplains and drainage lands. We are fortunate that Wellesley, since the beginning of its beginning that I read its history, took very seriously preserving the town's beauty, open space, and some degree of planning so every farm in town wasn't turned into a tract house development, which I've seen in other communities around the country. I did this as a single parent, raising 2 sons, educating them, and providing them opportunities such as foreign travel, sports, and including helping my eldest son train to be an Olympic athlete. I regard my sons as a great accomplishment. It is for our kids and our grandkids that preserving our environment is so vitally, vitally important. And I don't know how much time I have left, but there is one. He's 6.5, going into 1st grade. There is 9 months old Everest, and there is little Theodora Teddy. So these are the people that we have to take care of our future and our environment.
Thank you, Gwen. Hi, Odessa, are you ready? I'll go on mute. You have to go off mute.
Yep, I'm ready. Okay, thank you. I'm Odessa Sanchez, and I want to thank the Sustainable Wellesley group for having and hosting us this lovely evening. I'm very excited about the opportunity to speak with this Zoom meeting, because this is actually one of the first sort of interactive with the people in the town opportunities that the candidates have had. So this is a great opportunity. It's one of my favorite parts of the campaigning. So I guess I will begin at the beginning. I was raised in Newton, Massachusetts, and before high school, I was a campfire girl, and not as popular as Girl Scouts, but I was very proud to be one. My mother was also the mother of the troop, so I was able to interact, and I was able to see a lot of the developmenting purposes of recruiting, hosting, having the sleepovers, seeing how much work my mother put into being a troop leader. And just, of course, being one with nature, it just, it fostered an early excitement that I've always had with nature, bird watching, flowers, our response to the environment and what our place and responsibility is. So that's how I started. And it's no surprise that my mom was the leader in that, because I try to lead my children as well. And I think it's important. So high school was Newton South, and I was a class president. Obviously, I'm a Black American, but I did grow up in Newton, Massachusetts. The communities are similar to Wellesley, whereas I was a minority, but I did not let that hold me back in any of the achievements and the goals that I had. I had lots of opportunities, and I feel like everyone has the opportunity if they work hard enough. So that made me fall in love with government. And I went to school late, but I went to school to learn biomedicine. And I was working for doctors Bruce and Barbara Fury, who lived in Wellesley. I worked for them at Tufts Medical Center as a biolab engineer. And we just had a great opportunity to work with the sciences, hematology lab, but also appreciating the environment. They had a beautiful lab in Woods Hole where we would go on company retreats. And as a 19-year-old, I mean, it was very exciting to me to be the youngest one going on those Cape trips. But I couldn't drink, but I was having the clam bake and I was having a good time. And then I decided to have a family. Working in a lab does not mix with that. There's a lot of things about biomedicine that we weren't aware of. So when I started my family, after living in Norwood shortly, I moved to Wellesley in 2008. I had a kindergartner, a 3rd grader, and a 4th grader. And immediately landing here, I was engaged in my schools, my children's school, and I became a PTO of FISC. During the middle school years, I was a dance chair. I took that position on and I kept it for 3 years. And then in the high school, I ran and won parent-elect for the student council, where I worked along with the principals. I actually got to work with Kehoe and Jamie Chisholm. So I had two principals that I worked with. And I've just obviously become the head coach of the cheer team. So I think I'm qualified as far as the school system. And then as far as the neighborhoods, I live on Barton Road. I've become involved in neighborhood cleanup. I take care of my yard as if I was a homeowner, because it's the land, and I think we all own the land in a way. And so nurturing my garden is one of my favorite things, taking care of the trees, making sure that we have an aesthetically looking development, and as well as we care for it and we make a responsibility for it. I'm very excited about the opportunity to share more when I get the questions to me, so I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Odessa. Thank you all. Okay, so this is all new, right? So I'm going to ask the question, and if any of you want to answer it, just unmute. And then there's literally, let me look here, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably like a good 7 deep questions. So if one doesn't resonate with all of you, then we'll go on, or any of you will go on to the next one. Okay, the first one is, there are ways for our town to reduce energy usage and incur cost savings. One idea is a microgrid. What are your thoughts on this or other energy saving methods for Wellesley to meet its town meeting goal of reducing greenhouse gases?
Okay. I have an idea about that.
Okay, go ahead.
So I actually was just watching the Natural Resources Committee's talk about several things. They were talking about field houses, but the microgrid question did come up. And one of the things that stood out to me was the actual location where they are proposing it to be, which would be across the street from the Tolson Car Center and right next to the Wellesley Housing Elderly Complex and the police station. So I think it's a great idea, especially since it sounds like it wouldn't be obtrusive, and that most of the digging would be subterranean, and so you wouldn't see it. I love the idea of a microgrid that actually is like a generator without electricity. So I like that idea. Just something that makes you think when you see all the What's Up Wellesley posts where people say, I lost power on Oakland. Do you have power on Ridgecrest? So being able to have our own secure source of power is something that would be exciting. What I do worry about is the location, because from what I understood, it's a historical grounds, and that is the site of the first Raider against Rockets, the Needham Wellesley High School football game. It's the location where that first annual Thanksgiving football game took place. And right now there's just a rock there that commemorates that. But I wonder how alumni or future athletes would feel about being able to visit that spot, and how it would represent and still protect their interests. So I'm curious about how they're going to do that, because I didn't hear them mention that at all, and I was waiting to hear about it. So I think it's a good idea though, but just again, thinking about the historical implications of where it's located.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Khaled?
Sure. So in preparation for this election, I have talked with several departmental leaders, and I had a conversation with Don Noel, who's a director of the Wellesley Municipal Light Plant. And that was when I sort of learned more about the plans to propose a microgrid at the police station, the senior housing there at Morton Circle, and at the Tolls Parsons Centre, to cover those 3 buildings. It would open up the possibility of solar and or other renewable generation on site, geothermal heating and cooling for the housing being part of that. And of course, that builds in some resiliency for these important buildings. I really love this idea. These are important resources for the town, especially the police and the Tolls Parsons Centre. And it also supports a vulnerable part of our population with the affordable housing for seniors there. If this project works well, it could be a sort of roadmap to taking this further in town. So I think it's really important from that perspective, and I think it's something that's exciting for the town. In terms of other ideas like that, I do support the ongoing discussions to install solar panels at the library and to seek out other similar opportunities where there may be big buildings in town that either were built before this was an opportunity, or those discussions just didn't happen during the building process. Our town government has a wonderful resource in the Sustainable Energy Committee, whose mandate is to seek out and pursue opportunities like this to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. As the town's executive body, the Board of Selectmen has a role in setting policy and therefore supporting the work and facilitating the engagement with other boards to make these things sort of come to pass. And that takes time, and it takes engagement and conversation and just persistence, I would say. So that's my response to that question.
Thank you. Gwen, did you want to comment, or should we go on to the next one?
Oh, you can, I mean, they've said everything I would have said. I love the idea. Just,
Okay.
I think it's great, but
Great,
go
thank
ahead,
you.
keep going.
I'll let you go first next time. Okay, did I do this one? Sustainability is on the minds of many and is woven into many aspects of our town, both privately and on the municipal level. Any thoughts on how to offer financial incentives to perhaps nursing homes, multifamily homes, apartments, condos, private schools, churches, other houses of worship, nonprofits in town to take more action on sustainability? I told you these were hard.
Do I get to say something?
Go first, yeah.
I mean, obviously, to me, being in business and knowing quite a bit about financial planning, because of the kind of company I own, tax credits. I mean, there are ways, I think there are ways to create incentives that can be really effective, without totally, making it so burdensome that people say, well, I can't afford to redo everything. And some of the stuff is very easy, like already there are incentives for solar if you do solar in certain buildings. There are incentives, I don't know how much wind we can do in Wellesley. I don't know, again, we talked about location, might be difficult. But the solar, I think, is an easier thing to do. I think in terms of an older building, I always think, well, can you bring it up to being LEED certified? Because that's sort of like the gold standard of being really together, is to have a LEED certification. And I've been told that that with LEED, you can do everything, but to get the certification might be more money. So again, tax credits, maybe an abatement. There might be grants and other things available on the federal and state level. And I don't know, because again, I've been working in private industry and business, but I'm guessing, and I'm pretty sure with the business people I've talked to, that there are incentives on the federal and state level, as well as, and again, I don't know what else you could do. It's taxes, commercial real estate taxes. But that would be my first, just off the top thought. Look for financial incentives to make it happen.
Thank you. I see Colette unmuted, so I'll go to Colette.
Okay. I feel that it's really important to make sure we put our efforts into initiatives that really move the town forward to its goal to reduce carbon emissions. And to that end, the Sustainable Energy Committee has applied for a significant grant to engage a consultant to help the town create a climate action and resiliency program, which they are referring to as CARP for short. And so I think it's really important to focus on initiatives that come from that program. Again, the town, as the town's executive body, the Board of Selectmen has a role in setting that policy and supporting that work. And the SEC has had a great track record in identifying grants that sort of further the work that they think is going to make the biggest progress in sustainability. So I think that's where we really need to be focused, is taking this time to make a plan. Seeing what comes from that plan is the most important thing, and then using the resources we have in town through the SEC and other boards who are engaged in this work, like the NRC, to seek out grants that will help do that. So that's what I think the role of the Board of Selectmen is here.
Thank you. Odessa, do you have anything? Oh, you're muted. Okay, go.
Yeah, so I mean, the ladies summed it up, but I just wanted to point out something that wasn't mentioned, and that would be the economical impact of sustainable programs or initiatives on those that are the most vulnerable. I think part of the question mentioned nursing homes, and one of my platforms is advocating for the elderly. And when I think of a nursing home, my aunt had to go to a hospice. I've had older relatives that had to go to nursing homes, and I know that there are incentives statewide and federal wise, but you know, sick and elderly people, they need to be cool in the summer and they need to be warm in the winter. And I just think that we should focus on the things that we can change, and look out for the most vulnerable and not penalize them for not being able to take care of some of the things that they would if it wasn't for putting health first, as well as making sure that people on fixed income or people who've had temporary job loss, you have to take that into consideration. Make sure that these critical things are able to be implemented without a detriment to them and their finances. So, I mean, I'm all for thinking of programs, things that they could find assistance for those type of things, because I think that's important to remember the most vulnerable.
Great, thank you all. Next question, what changes would you support to speed up Wellesley's response to the climate crisis? Immediate, oh, go ahead. Sorry, that was it. It's a big arching question.
I lost the sound for a minute. Could you repeat?
Sure. What changes would you support to speed up Wellesley's response to the climate crisis? Colette, I see you're unmuted. Oh, and
I'm
sorry.
happy to defer. If you'd like to go, I'm happy to defer.
Okay. So first off, I think that Wellesley is extremely recycle, brilliant. We've led the nation in our recycling efforts. We were one of the first Massachusetts communities to win Green Community of the Year, and our Idol program in 2008, they also won awards. So I think that we've obviously are setting the bar very high, but to speed up, I'm outside, and the first thing I'm thinking of, I'm always thinking of trees, and I feel that planting more trees in Wellesley would speed up the efforts to reduce global warming, taking care of trees that are decaying and in need of repair, creating programs to help people who can't afford to care for their trees or to remove them, removing old trees before they become dangerous. I mean, we just had a storm that came through, and it frightens me to think of homes or people being harmed from falling trees. So I think that planting trees and taking away the old ones and replacing them with new ones is one of the best ways we can speed up that process.
Great, thank you. Gwen, you're unmuted, so I'll let you go.
No, I need to just add, so we are lucky in Wellesley with the committees, with our volunteers, with the awareness in the town that, people are very involved, but still so many people, 28,000 people are not involved. I mean, they just think, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. And I think if we can somehow get the message out that every person makes a difference. Like I know I wrote in my written statement, my written answers to your questions about this issue of cars idling, or about, people don't understand, for instance, that if you eat organic food or that you eat more of a plant-based diet, that you make a difference in the environment. So there's little things, because people think, well, I'm one person. Wellesley is a little 10 square mile place. Like, what difference does it make when China's spewing out pollution all day long in their factories? And I've been there and I've seen it. Well, the difference is every person can make a difference. And I guess the only thing I would say is that to move it forward, we have to get awareness, not just with a great group like yours, but somehow maybe a town initiative. I mean, recognizing that the selectmen are an executive board, a proclamation, maybe a special day. There are days, but maybe more details, something that we can get people educated to know that even that little piece of recycling, going to the recycling center, which by the way is terrific that we have, one of the best, I think. And we're lucky we have a lot of this, but I just think raising awareness and letting everyone know that every person can make their difference if they just do their part. They just do their little piece. So, okay, that's.
Thank you. Colette?
Hi. So I think the changes that we need to support to make a difference really are multi-factored and multi-pronged. There is the personal level that I think Sustainable Wellesley does a really good job of, so telling you small things you can do in your everyday life, and that's really helpful. At the town level, I've already talked about the Climate Action Resiliency Plan, which I think is going to be an amazing way to build a roadmap to move forward for the town and take big steps. But it's not the only thing the town's doing. The Board of Selectmen worked in partnership with the Board of Health, the Planning Board, the Natural Resources Commission, and the Wetlands Protection Programme to be able to apply for the Municipal Vulnerability Programme, which they were accepted into, and we can now get grants from that programme to help us prepare and have be more resilient in the face of climate change. And I think these are the sort of things that we need to, at the Board of Selectmen level, focus on, is these programs that are broad, town-wide, sort of leading, making a policy for us in the longer term. And so that's where I think the Board of Selectmen comes in, is to really leverage the resources of the boards that we have in town, listen to the work that they're doing, engage with them, and help to build consensus throughout town to move those programs forward. So that's where I see that. Thank you.
Thank you all. You're knocking these out of the park. Okay, this one should be easier. What is the main issue on which each candidate will focus if elected? This may not be sustainably minded, I realize, but it was one of the questions, so I'll let it go.
I'm happy to respond if that's okay. So this selection is for a 6-month period, and it's going to be a very busy period and challenging period for Wellesley. I guess it's hard for me to say one main area. I think there's 2 really main prongs that I think that I can help in the next 6 months. We need to understand the full financial impact of COVID-19. Now, the town was very well prepared and very well positioned in terms of cash reserves at the beginning of this crisis. We were at the upper limit of our stated reserves policy, so a rainy day fund was there. And the town has been very proactive in cutting budgeted cash capital spending. Each department cut 25%. And we did make reductions in our revenue forecast. So our budget is pretty conservative going into the fall. What we need to really understand is what the actual impact is on our income. So what is state aid actually going to be? What are Chapter 70 funds actually going to be? What are our tax collections actually going to happen? It's been okay in the first period during COVID, but we'll need to see in the second period that's just recently been collected, you know, what are they, where do we stand with that? So I bring with me financial acumen, and I'm really hoping and excited to help with on that front. The second main area is really schools. We have some very, very important decisions to make on the schools going forward, and some big votes coming in front of the town. There's an important decision to make in terms of building either Hardy or Upham, and making sure that we can sort of secure those Massachusetts School Building Authority funds that are on the table for us. It's up to $13 million we can secure if we can move forward successfully with that program. I've been very involved in schools for years. I've been watching these developments, and since October, there's been a feasibility period that's happened, a feasibility study of which site to choose. And I've rewatched every school committee meeting and every school building committee meeting in order to be ready for that. All of those projects, and there's also the middle school systems replacement project, which isn't nearly as exciting, but it's important and it has to be done, and it also requires a debt exclusion. And all of these projects are very good news from a sustainability perspective, because the energy usage index is just vastly better under these new buildings or these renovations than they are right now. And so supporting them and moving them forward is good, not just for the students, for the town, but for the environment too. So that's really what's important to me, and I am hoping to lend my support to moving those things forward in a constructive manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Odessa?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I believe the question was what was going to be my focus. If I have the opportunity, I do realize that there are multi levels and there's a multifaceted question about where we should put our priority in the next 6 months. Definitely thinking of the impact of COVID. It's been one of my platforms, which is to ensure smooth reopening of schools for both educators as well as families and students. I do believe that the best part of grassroots campaigning and politics is actually being on the ground and talking with the people. And I'm very glad that we do have the opportunity to have access to school meetings and in all the town meetings actually, and you can look back at them and you can review them. I mean, we all have access to see all those meetings, but you need to be able to talk to the people. I spoke with a teacher yesterday, and I was almost in tears. The way that some of them are torn because they love their kids, they love the students, they love their jobs, and they're at a crossroads right now where they're really at a place where there's discussions and there's things that are happening right now that we were not able to prepare for. I'm very confident in my town and the funds that have been made available, but it frightens me to believe that we are well prepared for COVID, because I doubt that. I know that just when you think of the reopening that's prospect for September 15th, transportation has to change. And, a 75 occupant bus now, only 25 children can ride on it. Special education students who need to be in school and need to have remote learning, or they need to have in-person learning, they have to find a way to safely come to school. Parents who can't afford to drive their child to school have to find a way to get their kid to school, and the school will reimburse them for that. So these are funds that I'm not sure that we are fully aware of the impact until we actually implement them. And I'm sure there'll be a triage. There'll be a phase where we're trying to repair things, or we're trying to just make sure that we support the most important things. Like, for instance, things that we used to gloss over, and we made things pretty. Now we're just making sure things are functional, and that we're taking care of what needs to be done and prioritizing. I just don't think we should take it for granted that this is going to be a very challenging time, and I don't take it for granted. I know that I will be well studied, and I will make sure that I pay attention to all of the information and all the data, and I think I'll hold my judgment until then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess. Oh, Phyllis, can I just add something very quickly? I just want to say, of course, I would focus on the finances and what's happening. And, I appreciate that Wellesley, I've been on the town meeting. I've seen the budget for the last 4 years. I understand that. But what Odessa said was so true with the schools. I read over the school plan, or at least what they proposed I think it was this morning or yesterday, and all the PPP that you have to have and the extra, that costs money. And again, I don't know what the state's going to do. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but that would be the first thing, that we can continue going down this road. In addition, the issue of, the school thing, which has been like such a huge, I, in my precinct, have gotten all kinds of emails prior to the vote in March from, people in my, as town meeting that want neighborhood schools, especially being in the Hardy district. People feel very passionately and very emotionally about it. And I don't know if I want to be the person to make the decision between the Hardy and the Upham, except that there's a study being done, and that will help make the decision. But I do think that, it's easy to talk about debt exclusions and borrowing money. I know all about borrowing money from my company. I know what it's like to create interest, to create, models, finance models where you show interest rates regressive, progressive, going back and going forth. And right now we're in a very low interest rate environment. Maybe it's a good time to borrow money and build schools. I don't know. But those are things that I obviously am not only competent and understanding of, but care about as well, that we are good stewards. We don't want to end up in a situation where if interest rates something were to change, and we've committed all this stuff to do all these projects, and then something changes in the economy, which can happen. I mean, look at COVID. Who would have expected this? Go back to February. None of us. I actually had heard about it because I had clients who had family in China, and I heard something was happening, and I was getting nervous about flying around the country. But I mean, we didn't know. Things can change in a moment, and same for the economy. If you remember 2008. So I think it's important to keep an eye on that, and that would be just one of my focuses. And again, it's a 6-month term, and I agree with Colette on that. You can only do so much in 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you all. Next question. A reason people move to Wellesley is due to the character and the charm of our town. This includes many of the older houses and smaller homes that can provide an affordable option for young professionals and families. What is your thought on the high rate of teardowns across Wellesley, and what is your vision of this topic moving forward?
I have to comment, pardon me. I live in the Fells neighborhood. I know all about the teardowns. My entire street, not my entire street, virtually most of my street. I live on Mayo. Across from me is Hamilton. Every single house on Hamilton was torn down in the last 10, 15 years. When I moved here, I came from Dover. And, you know, I came when I was a single person or single woman, but I had my kids. And people used to tease me in Wellesley, oh, you live in the poor part of town, you're in the Fells, you know. It's not the case anymore. They've torn down all these homes. I was on the town meeting when they had the arguments about this. I'm glad at the end, as much as I feel that people have the right to make decisions on their property and people have the right to make their choices. I mean, it's America. People have to be able to do what they want to do. That's what we represent. Still, I mean, it got to the point where, you know, all these massive homes, they would be next to older homes. There were a host of problems. The town did the right thing, although a lot of people, it was a very divisive issue for those who go back and remember what happened. And I think it is right to have a good town. You got to have somewhat of a mix of people. You got to have old people, you got to have young people, young families, old families, singles. You know, obviously we don't have a ton of apartments. We can't have totally that, but we do have some smaller homes. I wouldn't say they're modest in price at this stage, but they are. So now the town, look, the barn doors, we closed the barn door after the horse ran away. We stopped the overbuilding. There are rules in place. There are guardrails, which is what you need. But I feel very strongly the town should keep its character. Of course, it makes sense. You know, you've got some beautiful older homes, and even though energy-wise, maybe you don't want to heat that big house, maybe it's too much money. Putting solar panel on a house that has gables might not work, but there might be ways. So I just can tell you, the character of our neighborhood changed. I don't know if it's for the better. Obviously, my house hasn't been torn down because I'm still here, but you know, I observed it, and I just think we have to have a town that's diverse. That's all I'm going to say. Leave it at that. It's the nicest way I can put it without upsetting everybody.
Thank you, Gwen. Colette or Odessa?
No, Colette can go.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So Wellesley did adopt a large housing review process following that period of several tear downs in the sort of McMansion era. And that process is to mitigate the effects of tearing down houses. Wellesley has also adopted a housing production plan to address the need for a broader range of housing opportunities. So now that the town has reached safe harbour with the continuing progress on the redevelopment of the William Street industrial area and the 40R project that's proposed there, the town has more control over what it does with its housing choices. We're less vulnerable to 40Bs because we've reached safe harbour. So one of the goals of the housing production plan is to sort of create housing in what is referred to as the missing middle. So sort of dual occupancy housing, accessory units, multifamily housing, that sort of thing. And so now the town can develop a strategic plan to move forward with those initiatives. And there's currently a number of options that they're considering to move that forward. And so I think, again, the Board of Selectmen's role is to support that work, bring the community into the conversation. There are community groups that are very interested, and just move forward with that. But it takes time because you have to build consensus. and work with neighbours who are concerned about change. In particular, there's a couple of proposed developments, one in Delanson Circle and one on Western Road that are moving forward. And I think it means that we need to take some time and see when those two projects are sort of finished and what they look like and what they feel like and what the traffic impacts are. We may be in a better position to sort of talk about the railroad and Tailby Lot developments. Those developments have a lot of interesting aspects to them. It's housing that's right on top of mass transit, so it's very close. You can walk to everything in town. It's a great place for that type of housing. But I do think it needs to be approached in a sort of fashion that works with the neighbours, and you can move it forward in a sort of constructive fashion. So I think it needs time to digest what's happening with the other 40Bs in that area. And I think it'd be really interesting to see what the development beside the town recycling facility ends up looking and feeling like. And that's all information we have to digest as a town. So like anything, like these large projects, takes time, takes persistence, takes collaboration, and it just takes building relationships and trust and listening to people and what their concerns are and just moving things forward over time.
Thank you. Odessa, do you want to answer too?
Well, it's interesting because Gwen was speaking to exactly what I was going to say, especially coming from a neighborhood where she's actually seen it for herself, and so it's more of a personal impact for her. For myself, I have an appreciation for the history of the town. Part of my platform is I want to preserve the history of Wellesley. I want to embrace what makes Wellesley unique, and I think that is the charm and the character of the homes. When thinking of building and tear downs, I come to the thought that it is private property. People are allowed to do what they want. I feel that I would just encourage them to, if you're going to build, try to restore or maintain as much of the original character of the property. Add on instead of just tear down. Of course, families have to grow. We have to account for changing in environment and things like that. So solar paneling or adding in paving or doing other such things. Obviously parking, because now we need more cars because our families are growing. But I just think that if you try to keep the house as much as you can, as with its original character, and think about the houses that are next to it. You don't want to have like the cute little bungalow right next to like a little McMansion because it doesn't really flow. I also respect actual archives of the town and historical treasures that you want to make sure that the Historical Commission here in Wellesley, which is fabulous. A couple of years ago, they reviewed the Hardy property, John Hardy. So I just think that we should always keep in mind restoring the history and remembering what makes Wellesley unique.
Thank you. Okay, so those are the questions that all the candidates knew about like within the last 24 hours, and we've gotten even more. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask the questions that we've received. I'm going to encourage everyone, if you have a question, to put it in the chat. And if we don't get to it now, we can share it with others later. So the first one we got was the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, just announced that they are lifting controls on pollution from natural gas, despite the known devastating impact of methane on climate change and human health. Given that Wellesley has more than 250 active gas leaks, what do you think the town should be doing to address this issue on the local level? And I realize none of you knew about this question in advance, but if you have something you want to comment on, please feel free to.
I mean, I'll comment. I have a gas little yellow flag in front of my apartment. And so, I think that there should be information. I think the response of everyone in town is to become educated, to find out where those pipelines are going, what do they mean, what do the gas levels actually read when they're coming to read the gas levels, what is some of the information that you need as a homeowner and as a resident. I also think that there should be incentives, things that you can do perhaps to show that you're responsible or that you've actually done something towards that. I know that there's on your site, I saw a beautiful a sign that you could have, this yard is pesticide free. I think that's a beautiful idea. Maybe you could have like a little educational certificate. I took, gas emissions training, and people could post it, or just something to encourage and give an incentive for residents to become more informed. Because I think that if they were knowledgeable about that, I think that the responsibility will kick in once they find out.
Thank you. Gwen or Colette, do you have anything you want to mention? Okay, Colette is off mute.
Sure. I think addressing the gas leaks issue is a really long-term issue, and it's an issue that's almost in some ways difficult for us to tackle as a town, because it affects more than just us, it affects the state. And so I have seen that Selectman Lisa Olney is working with a working group of several towns to try and build some leverage between the towns who are having these issues, to talk with the gas line providers and kind of get their attention and get them to address the leaks that are most harmful in our town, and so prioritizing them, but standing together and as towns to make that happen, because it's very difficult to work with these national utilities. We're a small town and they're a huge organization, so that has its challenges. But I'm wondering if this is something where you engage your legislatures in this discussion, and we have annual meetings, as the Board of Selectmen would have annual meetings with the legislators, and so moving that up on the priority list there. And then even perhaps that's something that we can use one of these municipal vulnerability grants for, to try and further the work, or get ourselves some resources to get the national companies to pay more attention to that. That's it's a hard one for a town to, so it's the David and Goliath really, but it's a hard one for the town to leverage against a big national company.
Thank you.
I'll just be very brief. It's a public utility at the end of the day, from what I understand. So they do have some accountability. And Colette's right. It is, we are a small town. Maybe the idea of leveraging 3 towns would be an issue to address it. So I think it has to go through a different sort of course to be addressed. So I know time is starting to run out. So I just wanted to just mention that, there's probably recourse, but I don't think in this forum and the time we have to go with what we could do to what you can do with a public utility, how you can get something changed, can be done. But I just want to mention that real quick. So
thank you. What additional opportunities for protecting Wellesley's open space do you see in increased collaboration between the Natural Resources Commission and the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust? So I'll repeat that. What additional opportunities are there for protecting Wellesley's open space? Do you see if there's any, one, increasing the collaboration between the NRC and the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust, or just in general? I mean, I'm kind of curious.
I think that an opportunity to have a conversation is always there. I like both of those organizations because they care so much, and they take the time to actually research the impact on everything. They want to make sure that the water is safe, that the wildlife that is affected, they don't leave any stone unturned. So I really think that a conversation is the opportunity, and not just with those actual organizations, but let's have those organizations go and speak with the schools, the churches, the businesses that are located near those open field spaces, because they're also, it's important when a business is there and what's type of waste or what type of flushing that happens near that site. A church, there's an opportunity there for religious leaders who in town Wellesley, they meet on a regular basis together. So you could find an opportunity where the right people are all in the right place for you to have those necessary conversations, and you can get a lot done that way.
Thank you. Colette?
So I guess the NRC, what I liked recently is the Wellesley Conservation Council recently changed their name to the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust, just to make it more obvious to the community at large that that's part of their mission. So that's one step in the right direction. But some of the open space we have in town that we're still currently thinking about is the North 40. And it would be important to have some broad community engagement in deciding what to do with that land. There were certain ideas when we purchased that land, so there's kind of a very, very loose idea framework out there, but that's going to be something that the town would have to come together and take some time to make a good decision there, bringing in lots of people. And so that would be definitely one area where the NRC and the Wellesley Conservation Land Trust could work together. There's not so many other big parcels of open land that I'm aware of that we have the opportunity to kind of really think about carefully. But we've already made great progress in making some of that, a piece of that property easily accessible and usable by the community with the little boardwalk to the vernal pond there. So I think that's the kind of thing that's moving in the right direction. But it's like people call it the Wellesley way. I'm not sure that it's the Wellesley way. It's just the way to do something thoughtfully is to take time, get a lot of input, have an idea, but be open to changing the ideas over time, because the more that you push and pull between different groups when you're making this idea, you generally come out with a better product in the end. It just takes the willingness to be open and listen. And, again, for the Board of Selectmen, it's providing support and providing guidance to get that long-term sort of view of things for the town. So that's where I come.
I'll just be very brief because, again, the time. I've seen firsthand in my travels what it looks like when you take a beautiful piece of land and you put a strip mall on it. And I've been, if you've ever been in suburban towns in Illinois or Indiana, or perhaps in some of the southern states, or even California even, I know what it does. And we are so lucky to have what we have here in this area. And we have incredible volunteers in this town that give with their expertise and their knowledge, people that are really experts, and some of them in their field that are just on these different boards. I didn't know that Conservation Land Trust had changed their name, but the National Resources, Trails, Wetlands, there's all these people. And I think if this will go before town meeting. Anything that's a big parcel, I think would be before town meeting, and they would have to discuss it. And Colette is absolutely right. There has to be a sort of buy-in, to use a business term, from the community on what they're going to do. And I would obviously personally advocate that we keep as much open space as we can. It's better for the environment. It's better for our health, to breathe fresh air. And it's just better. And it doesn't look aesthetically great, because I've seen what it looks like when it's not done the right way. That's it.
Well, thank you all. It is 8:28. We have questions here from everything from the playing fields to traffic and transportation to your favorite sustainability tip, but I think we're going to have to leave it at that. Unfortunately, you all have been so grateful to give us so much time and so much thought. We want to thank all the candidates for joining us, for all of you. We know that different aspects of sustainability are meaningful to different folks. If there's something that Sustainable Wellesley is not discussing in our newsletter, on the website, social media, and in our action meetings, that's something that really is important to you, please let us know. You can always email us at info@sustainablewellesley. When I say us, it's really just a group of volunteers, and the more the merrier. On a similar note, we are a 501c3, and if you like what you see and you care about this topic, you're welcome to make a donation. But we do this out of a passion for our community and for this planet that we're living on. So thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you, candidates. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Good night.